do you think is the future of guitar tones?
Guitar tones?
Yeah.
Well, I've been, as for myself, I've been a user of amp sims for a long time. I was an early adopter, I suppose, because I started using like a half rack Zoom unit in the early mid 90s, and I've pretty much been using different kinds of amp sims ever since, and they used to be in racks and in different forms, the pods and all of that stuff, and now we have them in the computer. So I have no idea like where they're gonna be. Are they gonna be in the cloud?
Yeah, so where can you download your tone?
Are we gonna play guitar, or are we gonna just like prompt the AI?
Yeah,
you know,
it's an interesting place where at the moment I don't know whether so I teach guitar day to day, and I don't know whether I'm going to be out of a job in like the next 10 years. You know, if there's just going to be software that can just teach you, you just set up a camera in front of you and then you play guitar and the camera goes, okay, you should do this, 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 and this. And then that's it. And I'm like, that's quite possible that would, and it would be a great thing, because then guitarists could learn all the things they need to learn, customized to them for free. Or maybe it might be free, but I kind of think, wow, that could put me out of a job pretty quickly. I don't know where that's going. With the kind of the modeling stuff, how come? What sort of drew you to that so early on? Especially when maybe the technology wasn't necessarily where it is now.
Because I recorded myself early, like even when I started playing, like when I was like 10 or 11, and I had the double cassette deck where you can record from one cassette to the other. So this is like really ancient technology, but like there was a way that I could like hold in an extra button. There was some move I did. The machine wasn't supposed to be able to do this, but I could do it. I could record on one tape, and I put it in the first, and then I like play that, and I could record to the next one. But if I press something, I could also record with the little microphone that was on it, so I could overdub myself. So I did that early, and then I got myself a 4-track cassette Porta Studio, and like it was very difficult to like do a line in signal, a DI, or I didn't have any means to mic up an amp, and if I tried to, it just sounded like shit. So when I got the Zoom unit, which was really cool for its time because it had like built-in effects and sounded pretty good, and I could just like plug it straight in and record. I never used it live. Live back then was all real amps, but it was amazing to be able to play with like headphones on, live in an apartment and that kind of thing. The convenience of it. And for me, it's always been the convenience of it, because I'm a convenient person, I suppose. And but in recent years, the quality has really caught up. Like for me, there's no need for using real amps.
Yeah, it's they have a real like when I notice so the only thing for me is that I like to have a noise coming out of a speaker cab. I feel like that, just because I've got studio monitors in front of me, and I feel like it sounds exactly like if you were to mic up a cab and then have it in the other room and then hear it out the studio monitors. But I like to hear the actual speaker cabinet. There's something about the quality of that speaker. Obviously, it wouldn't work just have as your like computer speaker, having this massive unit on your desk.
Yeah, if you want to have the sound in the room, of course a 4x12 is gonna be different than studio monitors.
Yeah.
For sure. So of course there's many places where it would be appropriate to have a real amp and a real cab.
Yeah. Do you talked about from a young age kind of recording your music, and I know a lot of young kids, certainly when I was younger and I played, they have an interest in playing, but recording your own music is kind of its own discipline that I think a lot of younger people learning the instrument maybe don't look into. They maybe enjoy playing, but maybe don't think to record it. Would you say you're quite a sort of a constructive person that likes to have these things to work on, even from sort of a young age?
Yeah, I mean, I was very interested in recording early because I was interested in composing and arranging, and I guess if I played one guitar part and then I came up with a harmony, I was like, I can't play them both at the same time. I want to hear what they sound like. So just by that, I wanted to record. Like even before I wanted to record like an actual demo or album. So I just wanted to hear what it sounded like. And I used to have a really great teacher. I had a music teacher at my school that he let me. This was before I had my own Porta studio. We had one in the music room at the school, and I was like 13 or 14, and he let me stay after hours. Like he gave me the keys, like you stay as long as you want, like. And I got to stay and play around and record stuff, and I plugged in the guitar and plugged in keyboards and just had fun with it, and which was very generous of him with his time. So yeah, so for me that was like like a little playground, and I could test things without having to go through someone else, without sitting with some other musician and be like, play this. I mean, I did that too, for sure. But I really enjoyed that aspect of recording. And then as time went along, I learned more, and eventually I started recording like for real.
Yeah. Has guitar always been like a kind of a passion project? Because I know especially a lot of young people can kind of at some point along their musical journey can lose interest in, especially when you're young, you've got a million things you could be interested in. What do you think it was that maybe kept you interested, or did you ever lose interest in any way at all?
I never lost interest, and I mean, I went to music schools when I was a kid and when I was a teenager, and some of the people they have stopped playing later, even though they were really talented at that time. Then life happened, and they moved on, and they like studied to be an engineer or something, and they raising a family, and they're like, no, I don't play anymore. And to me, that's for myself, that just seems crazy, because music is like a never-ending thing for me. I'm like, it never shuts off in my head. It's always there. Even when I'm talking to you, I'm having music in the back of my head. So it's like background noise. So it's hard to imagine a life without music. I had a few years in my 20s where I couldn't play because I had like repetitive strain injuries in both my arms from over practicing, and so I didn't play guitar for 4 years, which is quite a long time, especially like when you're a young man. like the perspective of time is different than when you get older. So I didn't play for 4 years, but the music never stopped. Like I kept thinking about music. I got myself a little sequencer I could write music on, and this was like in the 90s, late 90s. So it was kind of before it was kind of before like digital recording on computers. So like you could have MIDI sequences on computers, but audio recording wasn't really a thing yet. But I had a little hardware synthesizer sequencer that I used. So I had quite a long time where I couldn't play, and I didn't know if I was ever gonna be able to play again, because I had so much troubles and pain with my arms. And then when I got back to playing, when I finally got well again, like my playing was a lot better than when I left off. So for me, it's like music it's just like continuing. So even if I go on vacation with my family for a week and I don't bring the guitar, I'm still like always doing music.
Yeah.
So
to stop for
so
like,
it would be crazy for me to stop.
yeah, of course. I mean, to be sort of stuck for 4 years or so without being able to play, how does that kind of affect your mindset? And I noticed particularly you said the sort of way you perceive time at that age versus say now might be different. How does that kind of, how did that affect you at the time, and how do you look back on that? So how do you reflect on that now?
Well, first I had some problems a few years before this, when I was still in my teens, where I stopped playing for just a few months, and that seemed like forever back then. So when this happened, I already knew a little bit what it was going to be like, and I was hoping for it to be over as quick, but it wasn't. So there was a little bit there, a short time where I was feeling super depressed, and because it's also an identity thing, like when your entire identity is based on like your skills. Yeah, like you're the guitar player. Everyone knew that I was the guitar player, and people knew that I had some talent, and people were impressed and stuff, and maybe I was a little bit cocky, like being a young guitar player. I could shred, like I'm kind of a big deal in my hometown or something. I don't know. And then that was just like taken away from me, and suddenly like, oh shit, I'm not that guy anymore. And also I could like I met people and I could feel like their pity, of me, and that was also a really weird feeling, that to have people feel really sorry about me, like, you were so talented, you can't play, that is awful. And I was like, yeah, like I don't want to talk about it. So, but there was like a sort of a defining moment when I suddenly got fed up with myself being depressed about it, since like there was I felt like there was nothing I could do. I saw doctors, I went to different therapies, massage, ultrasound, acupuncture, like cortisone injections. I was checking if I was a subject for surgery, but I wasn't. So yeah, so it was pretty depressing. But then one day I just decided that I cannot change what I had for like the rest of my life is going to be depressing, because I wasn't actually, I was sad about what happened, but I was, I wasn't like clinically depressed. So I sort of from one day to the other, I decided to not be so miserable about it, and just be like, I need to turn this way and focus on something else. I had to like drop the focus on the guitar. I still, was thinking about music. I was listening to music and I was writing stuff on my little sequencer. But I just like put the guitar in the back mirror, I went back to school and got my grades up, and I actually for a very brief period I went to the university and started studying to be an engineer, which I dropped out of as soon as I could start playing again. But it was a really weird time, but it's it gave me a lot of perspective on life. And then when I got back to playing, I was like 28, and I felt like I had been missing out on like all the chances to start a career, and people that I used to go to school with, the ones that were talented and had drive, they were like out in the world playing and, you know, having gigs and doing fun stuff. And I wasn't, and I like had started playing, but I could only play, you know, for so long per day. I didn't want to overstrain myself, so I had to keep it really chill. And I remember thinking, like, as I was approaching 30, you know, I was thinking that I'm way too old to, you know, have this as a career, you know, like for sure I'm too old. Like where would I start, you know, and who would care? And so it's interesting now when it's like 20 years later. I just turned 49, and I have a little bit of a career, and things didn't turn out so bad after all.
Yeah. Do you feel like that, looking back on how that kind of shaped your perspective on life? Do you know, a lot of people look back on moments in their life that are kind of, you know, the more sort of difficult times, and are sort of somewhat thankful for them for how it in some ways can shape how you think about the world. And, you know, you wouldn't necessarily want to have experienced that again, but
yeah,
looking back on it, are there any elements of that you're thankful for that helped you to sort of, I don't know, develop as a person in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty it was a pretty bad time at the time to have to go through that. And there's been other things, you know, that in life, like, you know, if I was in a relationship for a while, that wasn't like maybe something I shouldn't be involved in for that long time. And then, but it's like what everything led up to, like, I'm a very like positive person, and I feel like my life has been, you know, overall like a very positive experience. But like whatever bad things has happened, like where I'm at now, like I'm very fulfilled, like with what I do in my career. I get to do my own music, my own band, and I got to tour with a couple of my favorite bands for some time, and I'm married to my wife, who I love and who's my best friend, and we have a kid that's like the best person for me, you know. So and it's like it's very like if I would take away any of these things, like if I wouldn't have those injuries, like some of the people I went to school with, they went in and became like backing musicians for like pop stars and stuff. And if I wouldn't have injured myself, maybe I would have gone in that direction, and then my career would have turned into something completely different. You know, maybe something that wouldn't be like in my best interest, not the stuff that I wanted to do. So it's so difficult to see what my life would be like. And I ended up in a very good place. I guess if you have, I mean, I know some people who have regrets because like they made some decisions in the past, and now there are things in their life that are like shit, you know, to them, and then that's like regrets. So I don't really have any regrets about anything, because like I ended up here and I'm talking to you, and I've got my signature guitar, and you know, so yeah.
Yeah, I kind of I always find that interesting. I always find it interesting to talk about people who have changed direction in some way in their life, or maybe had that direction altered in some way. Because I think it makes you kind of think. I've said this to a few people on the podcast, but I was going to study business at university, and then I decided to pursue music, and now I'm kind of in another place where I was in a band for a bit. I play guitar, and I'm now kind of thinking about working on like vocals and maybe trying to front something, because I mean there are so many good guitarists out there, and I like writing lyrics and writing vocals and songs. So I'm like, maybe I should step towards that. And I think it's interesting hearing how other people deal with those challenges. There's nothing else for me if not for everyone else that's kind of listening. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like your the kind of music that you, and having been involved with a couple of different sort of bands and projects and things, how do the different projects kind of inform each other? Like, how have you found that one band might have sort of, how you operate in one band, has that informed how you then have gone on to operate in other projects and vice versa? Has it kind of, have you found that that's kind of changed how you write, how you interact with the band members, all of these kind of things?
I mean, like, just talking about Symmetry has changed in the way we operate a few times, because we have had the member changes. And when we started the band, it was sort of like a democracy, and we were like two main songwriters, and the vocalist wrote some of the vocal melodies as well. So we were three music composers, and then as the other two guys have dropped off from the band, and I was the only like music writer left in the band, that changed it very much. And these days I'm the songwriter, but I also handling all the business, and I've sort of become the leader of the band in a way. And then as I have played with other bands, like I joined Kaipa in 2006, I think it was, which is a studio project, and I've done 6 albums with them, I think. And then it's like I need to find my spot in that, but because when I joined Kaipa, I was like I said like I wanna write for the band if I'm gonna join, and the band leader was a bit like well, we'll see, I don't know, you know, all this music is written for this album, and I was like, okay, so we do this album, and then we'll see. But then later I was just like, no, I'm gonna sort of sit in the back seat in this one. I'm gonna play the guitar, and like I got some freedom to arrange the guitar part, so I found my place in that band. That it wasn't my place to contribute in that way. It wasn't what was asked from me, and it wasn't needed. And I realized that if I would start writing for it, it wouldn't sound like the band. And when I joined Nocturnal Rites, I did an album and I only contributed leads. And also when I joined that band, I was like, I want to write, but then we've only done one album with me so far. But when it's time to do the next album, I might contribute to the writing, but it's also like a realization that they had a legacy, you know, in a long career before I joined. It's like it's important to find your place.
Yeah.
And obviously when I started touring with Meshuggah, it wasn't I was only a touring member, so I wasn't I was never an official member, so there was never any, you know, talks about me contributing in that kind of way. But it even in Meshuggah, where I wasn't really part in the decision making of things, but sometimes I still like I could offer an opinion on something, like maybe we should do this that way, but I was always careful to not overstep, yeah.
Yeah. That kind of makes sense. I find it's interesting to hear about the different roles that people play in bands, because I know some bands, like you say, are just complete democracy where there might be 5 of them and they're all just throwing ideas in, and then other bands there's just like one guy who writes everything, and then everyone else kind of adds their parts and has their say. But what do you think is like is there like a recipe that you think is do you think one recipe is better than the other in terms of having a really democratic band versus a band that's more just kind of driven by like 1 or 2 guys, or what do you prefer as well?
I mean, I think the kind of bands where everyone gets to be creative and everyone has an equal say in all the decision making, I would think that that's a rare thing. And like Meshuggah seems to operate like that, because everyone writes. Not everyone writes as much as the others. Like the vocalist, he has written some really cool songs throughout the years, but I don't think he has written for every album. But still, like he gets to write if he wants to, and they all like share the decision making process. They I know they divide like the burden of running things a little bit. Like some of the guys are more hands-on with the business and others are not, but still it's very much a democracy, and they have regular band meetings and all of that. But I think that's seems to me like it might be a bit unusual. Like usually there's like 1 or 2 songwriters that are like the ones that have like a strong musical voice, and the other ones are more like supporting musicians. So and in some bands it's even like there might be 1 guy and the rest are like hired guns, even though it's not what's been projected out to the audience, but that's also like a pretty common thing.
Yeah. Do you feel like when it comes to sort of outputting your personal sort of musical voice, how open are you to hearing outside ideas? Like do you I know for a fact I can get a bit sort of cagey about if I've got an idea that I like. I like, it's one of those things where I like outside opinions if I agree with them, Like,
I totally get what you mean. I mean, right now, in Scar Symmetry, it's kind of nice because it seems like people have found their roles, and the other guys are not expecting to contribute with songwriting, and I'm thinking that they are also, kind of happy with what it is, and they dig the music and like are happy about being a part of it. And like our vocalists, they don't write any of the music, but they get to front the band, and they get to have a lot of fun, and so they find a way to express themselves, like within the context of my music, I suppose. And it seems to me like it must be difficult to have a successful band if you can't figure things out. I mean, I know bands like friends bands that are local and that are having a hard time doing stuff because the drummer can't record because he's got the kids that week, and the guitar player is supposed to is supposed to write some songs, but he wasn't feeling like it, and that guy, he doesn't want to tour, and and then it's like nothing happens, and no one's the boss, and then it's difficult.
Yeah, I feel like I've definitely been in that position where you're not, like I've definitely been in that position where the priorities aren't in the same place in the band, and that's always tricky, where you all want the band to do well, but not everyone wants to go about it the same way. And I feel like sometimes if you just have one or two people who just kind of steer the ship, for me that feels like the ideal. What is it that drew you to composition over, talking about being a hired musician for like these pop stars and stuff? What kind of drew you and continues to draw you to composition over just purely playing music? Is there something about you that's quite more creative, perhaps, or more like sort of piece these things together?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I like to lock myself up in my little laboratory and mix different formulas and see what comes out. It's that like the joy of discovery. And like I love creating things, and music is my favorite way of creating things and being creative. I also love to cook, even though I don't do as nearly as much creative stuff with it as I did when I was younger. Now that I have a family and like everyone needs to be happy and fed, it's like a different thing. But it's just like you have your ingredients like for cooking or for making music. Like you got the chords and the melodies, and like if you put them together like this, it's gonna be like so tasty and succulent. So yeah, so I really like putting stuff together and see what comes out, and be the first person to enjoy it, because like some people, they are like they write and record music and then they never listen to it because they like can't stand their own music, which is really crazy. It's like I'm gonna cook you a meal and I hate it myself. It tastes like shit, but here, have a taste. You know what I mean? It's like that's a weird approach to me. I try to write stuff that is very pleasing to me and that is interesting and compelling to me, and then I like to serve it to people. Hopefully others will like it.
Yeah, I always struggle with that, and you get like it's quite often the film stars that don't watch their own movies and things, and I kind of think, why? Like, I guess maybe if you're an actor, it's maybe different because you're sort of like a hired gun, I guess, for some movies, aren't you? But yeah, I never understood people who write things, and then I always used to listen. Like, I sort of don't listen to my music as much now, just because like I'm not in the band anymore, and it's kind of like bittersweet. So, but it doesn't mean I don't like the music, So. Yeah, I never understood that kind of not writing something and going, I don't like this, but I'm sure it's good, and then just putting it out. Yeah. Like, how do you know it's good if you don't like it? It's a weird kind of.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to figure that out. When it came to like writing, so it's been a while since your last release with Symmetry, right? Was there kind of did you feel a sense of sort of pressure or expectation in any way going into sort of writing for this and releasing this, or how do you what's your kind of mindset going into?
I suppose I did. I don't think anyone's asked me that thing actually so far. Everyone's asking why it took so long to get the album out, but I was so happy with Phase 1. That was the first album, like the first project I ever worked on, where I wrote all of the music and where I recorded everything, mixed and mastered everything. I played all the guitars, all the bass, keyboards, and did most of the backing vocals. It's like there's so much of myself put into that album, and I was so proud, and I am so proud with how it came out. It's like a lifetime. It was such an achievement for me to be able to do that, and also like the previously we had Jonas Kjellgren in the band, who is an excellent producer and mixer, and he was the main producer on the earlier albums. Like I started doing more and more of like co-producing with him on our albums. But when he left the band, it was like I needed like to prove myself and prove that I could do it, and I think I pulled it off, and I'm really happy about it. So that was kind of, it was daunting to have to compete with myself, like, because I put in so much time on phase one. So I wrote phase two, and I was happy with it, but I guess like there's been times when I've been like, I'm not sure if it's as good as phase one. So during the years, I've been kind of falling in and out of love with phase two, but it's also been connected to, since I've for a long time I've been sort of managing the band. I'm like I'm tour manager and business manager, and so I have to wear all these hats. And there was some time, like in 2017, I was kind of burnt out on doing that, and maybe like maybe there was also some pressure on finishing the album and try to make that as good, hopefully as good or better than phase one. So in 2017, I was kind of thinking like I need some time off. I want to do something else, and nicely enough, the opportunities arose that I could start touring with Nocturnal Rites and Meshuggah, two bands that I am a fan of. So I got to do that other thing, like the being almost like the backing musician for artists, the hired gun thing. So I got to do that, where I didn't have to worry about any gear, any crew, any money, fees, cost of flights and hotels and stuff. I didn't have to worry about anything. I just showed up and played my best, and I really needed that. So yeah. Well, now I lost where I was going. But.
It's okay. It's the whole beauty of these conversations. You can just kind of you can lose yourself in them. What would maybe be your advice? I mean, a lot of young musicians, or not just young musicians, a lot of musicians experience burnout in some way, whether it be in the music or in like the business side, or trying to build like a brand, like you seem to have to nowadays. What would be your advice for people that are struggling with that kind of feeling of burnout?
I don't know. Like, my burnout wasn't this kind of burnout that other people have. I've had like people close to me having like actual burnout, when you wake up one morning and you can't get out of bed. So it wasn't actually that. It was just like I felt like I wasn't feeling it anymore, and for me to do anything creative, I need to feel it. I need to be happy about it. I need to be happy and excited for it to really happen. Because if I'm not feeling it one day, like, oh, today I'm supposed to write songs for something, and if I'm not feeling it that day, it's very hard for me to sit down and work on it. I'd much rather just do something else with that day and wait for the next day when I feel good. Some people wait for inspiration. I know that when I feel my best, inspiration will just come. So if you're experiencing burnout the way I do, maybe there's some things that's not working the proper way. Maybe you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing in life. Maybe you're spending time on something that your heart's not really in it, and that's why you're feeling burned out.
Yeah, I know. for me, a lot of it is maintaining. I've been really focusing on trying to be healthier, you know, like keeping fit and healthy, like trying to sleep better, eat healthily, you know, sort of fix all of the things that can just get in the way of,
Sure.
you know, that getting into that mindset. Obviously, you can do it to the point of distraction where, you know, if you're working out and like meal prepping and planning everything, you can kind of get to the point where you spend so much time on like self-improvement that you don't actually spend any time doing any music. But yeah, it's that kind of, I feel like developing your mindset is kind of an important thing. Is that something that you've, in terms of sort of getting yourself in the right frame of mind for writing, do you actively sort of, are there parts of your life that you actively look after, sort of like in terms of mindset, to try and keep you in the right frame of mind for songwriting?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I try to feel good, you know. I want to do stuff that makes me feel good, and some of those things are spending time with my wife and my son and my parents, and making time to see friends every now and then, and yeah. But I guess it's not something that I think about. It's just how I want to do it. I try to steer away from things that I don't enjoy, and so on.
Yeah. So kind of going forward, what do you think are your sort of, what do you think, you know, looking to the future, sort of plans in terms of writing? Do you have anything in mind in terms of, okay, this is the next adventure, if you will, in terms of your writing direction or stylistic choice? Is there anything that you kind of think, I'd like to explore this, or I'd like to explore this way of doing things, sort of in?
Yeah,
you know,
I'm always thinking about stuff like that. I'm always thinking what the next step will be. Not only for songwriting, I'm thinking like, because I improvise a lot. Like that's one of my favorite things to do when I play guitar, to just pick up the guitar and just noodle and come up with ideas and melodies and stuff on the spot. That's something I enjoy. So I'm always like thinking. I always have like a melodic concepts I'm considering or working on, and so on. And that's like thinking about stuff I want to do, and then I do it. It's like the driving force, I suppose. It's like I have a vision for what I want to do, and then I do it, and that's very fulfilling. Yeah. So right now I have phase 1 and phase 2 behind me, and both albums are kind of leaning towards a progressive end of the Symmetry style. The first phase 1 is a little bit more melodic, and phase 2 is a little bit more heavy and brutal. So, but both are pretty progressive. So phase 3 is gonna be progressive for sure. That's like what the trilogy is gonna be about. But right now, I'm sort of not feeling for writing very progressive stuff. I'm actually right now I'm feeling more like I would like to write stuff that is a little bit, yeah, I don't know, less involved and convoluted, and yeah, so more like straight for the, I don't know. You get what I mean. So now I have that feeling like I want to do this thing, but I'm supposed to do this thing, and I'm not sure if they can meet. So what I will probably do is I'm about to go into a writing phase for Symmetry, since that is my main focus and main project now going forward. So I'm probably gonna just start every day with like a blank, like a blank piece of paper, so to speak, and see what comes out, like, and see what I'm feeling that day, and then we'll see what if it's gonna be that more easygoing things, or the super progressive, or something in between, and then I'll have to sort out as I go along where it will all end up. If I can get a phase 3 going, or if I need to get that other thing out of the way before, because it's like for each album we do, like if we go in one direction on one album, then for the next album either we have to continue further into that direction, or we have to go in the complete different direction.
Yeah, and you've obviously, if you write anything less progressive, you have to face the wrath of the prog metal fans calling you a sellout. If you write anything that's a little less, yeah, and that's like something that I could worry about, but I won't worry about it. Yeah.
Because like if I would do something that would be as progressive or even more progressive, like as to try to make that part of our fan base happy, because certainly there are a lot of people who don't listen to us for the intricate things. They are listening to us for like maybe the catchiness of the vocal parts and things like that. So if I would try to second guess like what the fan base would want to hear, that would be selling out, right? Because if I would try to, like, now I kind of try to write the stuff that's the fan base are gonna want to buy, like that's to me seems like more like selling out than to actually write stuff that is gonna like make me and the band happy.
Yeah, I suppose the irony is if because a lot of bands get kind of, get told they're sort of selling out, don't they? But I suppose the irony is if all of your fans tell you that they're annoyed because you've written something different, it's like, well, maybe you've done the opposite. Maybe you've, because if you've got a fan base, then you do something that maybe surprises them, then yeah, maybe actually that's kind of the opposite in some ways. Just quickly, I mean, we'll finish up in a second with and get your questions for the next guest. But did you see recently the video of Jacob Collier? I think you're a fan of his, right? And he, with his Strandberg, he was riffing away. What did you make of his? I didn't even know I assumed he could play guitar. It seems like he can do everything. Are you a particular fan of his music? Have you kind of?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan. He's one of my absolute favorite artists right now, and I've seen him live twice. In 2018, me and my wife drove down to because I realized that he was on a European tour, and I missed getting tickets to Stockholm, so I looked like where can we go, and he played in Utrecht, Netherlands. So we got tickets and we drove down, and he played with the Metropole Orchestra, and it was absolutely beautiful. I was in tears, And then I saw him last year in Stockholm, and when I saw him in Stockholm, I was out having dinner with Ola Strandberg, who makes my guitars and Jacob Collier's guitar, and he just came from a meeting with Jacob, so he showed me pictures of himself and Jacob, and Jacob and his guitar player. I think they both had received a Strandberg guitar, and his guitar player, she played a Strandberg that night, so it was really nice. But then I knew about this project of building a Strandberg for Jacob, and he uses this peculiar 5-string tuning. So he's got his. I think he used to play like D A E G A D.
So it's kind of tuned backwards almost.
So he used to be Dad Gad.
Yeah.
But with that middle D string tuned up to E. So that used to be his tuning when he had a 6-string, but then he just took out the G string. So then, so that's what he's got. So he's got like a D, A, E, D. So it's like.
Yeah.
That's like the tuning. So well, one octave lower.
Yeah.
So what he has is like in the bottom he has fifth, do do do, and then on the top there's fourth, do do do.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the outer strings are D, the next set of strings like are A, and then in the middle is an E.
Mm.
So it's like so if you just bar the thing, you get like a sus2 sus2 chord, and if you like fret a bit higher up on that middle string, you can get a minor chord or major chord.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool.
That's
and when they finished building that guitar, I was visiting the Strandberg headquarters. I got myself some playing time with it before Jacob got it. So I've tried playing his guitar. It was nice.
Yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, I need to. I've listened to a bit of his stuff, but I think I need to delve into. It's very. I feel like you really have to actively listen. I kind of I feel like I miss something if I'm not paying attention. You know, I can't just go into the kitchen and come back 10 seconds later because I feel like I've missed, you know, so many moments in the song. So
yes,
I feel like I need to actually
high density.
Yeah, I think he's got literally hundreds of tracks, doesn't he? In his songs. Trying to.
He's got a choir piece that opens. I don't know. I can't remember if it's Jesse 1 or Jesse 2. He's working on this 4-part album thing called Jesse, and one of the albums opens with a like a choral song called Home Is, and that's like I've been absolutely freaking out listening to it because it's so incredibly amazing. It's like the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, and I listened to it with headphones with like the volume cranked up, and it's, yeah, I just find it super beautiful and super emotional. There are like these chord voicings that are so incredible. Yeah, it's like you have to listen to it. Everyone who listens to this, go listen to Home Is by Jacob Collier.
Nice one. Okay, so well, let's I feel like we've kind of hopefully spanned an interesting selection of things for people to listen to. If we could maybe get your question to open the next podcast, and you can send it in any direction you like. It can be any kind of. I know you had a very guitar specific question, but it won't necessarily be a guitarist. It'll be a musical person. But you can ask them about the favourite chocolate or whatever, you know. Anything you like.
Oh shit!
You can set me up for a really terrible conversation. Depends how you want to. This is always where people
like. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've been thinking about is, like, if we go back hundreds and hundreds of years in music, like, it seems like all over the world, most of the like musical traditions that you find 1,000 years ago is like pentatonic. It's pentatonic music. Like there are really no like half tones, and you have like the Gregorian chanting in Europe, and you have like, you know, Chinese music. Everyone has like an idea of like traditional Chinese music would be, you know. It's almost like a caricature of itself, the way I've like heard it. So like it's pentatonics, and then as the centuries have moved along, like half tones have been added, like first as ornaments and then introduced as like proper steps of the scale, and then we ended up with 7-note scales. That's been like the basis of Western music. And at first it was like the major scale, and then we have introduced, and now we're at the place where we can use all 12 notes with still feeling like we're in the same key, in different ways, and now we have like there's people doing what do you call it?
It's like microtones and stuff.
Microtones, and Jacob Collier is actually has been experimenting with that. He's got a song that is in a key that's in between two piano notes, and there's also like my guitar has true temperament, which like fixes some intonation and temperament issues on the guitar, but there are also there's things happening in the microtonal realm, like that people are obsessing in with intonation, but also like working in between the notes and things like that. So for your next guess is like what's the future gonna be with intonation and the musical vocabulary? Are we gonna move beyond the 12 chromatic notes, or
we stay here forever?
Yes, because I think we are.
Yeah.
It might take some time, but it seems like some of the like the most important like people like Jacob Collier is like focusing on these things. So I'm thinking that it might be something that is gonna we're gonna see more of.
Yeah, I suppose the question is whether people will listen to, conventional, like, when you take like dance music and stuff that a lot of people that maybe aren't so musically involved might listen to, radio sort of, pop music. Whether that will start to incorporate that kind of music, I guess, will be to some degree. It's down to whether.
Yeah,
whether,
I mean, the way that music has evolved. With like the pop music that on the hit on the lists, it seems to have gone the other way. There's like less chord progressions. Everything is really monotone, and so maybe it's like we're seeing two different like arcs.
Yeah, interesting. And then also I need an artist you'd like to promote. I mean, I know obviously Jacob Collier is one that people should check out. Is there maybe like a smaller artist that you think deserves some love?
Sure, let's do a shout out to Tim Miller. Cool. Everyone knows that I'm a big Alan Holdsworth fan. It's like one of my favorite musicians, and for sure favorite guitar player. And when he passed a few years ago, I was very sad because he will never ever play a note again. And it's a big loss, but he left us so much music, so much amazing stuff. But then some time ago I discovered this guy, an American guy called Tim Miller, who has a Holdsworth adjacent vocabulary, and he's also got a very interesting harmonic language of his own. That it's his playing and his musical style is reminiscent of Holdsworth in a way, but it doesn't sound like Holdsworth. But it kind of feels like Holdsworth. So, and there was this, when I listened to one of his newer albums, he started playing a solo, and while it doesn't sound like Holdsworth, it gave me like a very familiar feeling that I almost like burst into tears listening to it, like because it was so beautiful. So Tim Miller, everybody.
Amazing, yeah. And then
it's not a big name, which boggles my mind, but he could be. Like, let's help him out, everyone.
Glad to help, yeah. And then anything you want to promote to the world to finish up?
No, it's Tim Miller.
Yeah, just stick with him. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Don't listen to my new album. Listen to Tim Miller.
Yeah.
Like, set your priorities straight.
Exactly, yeah, man. Cool, well, thank you very much, man. I've enjoyed chatting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Until next time.